Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deepshikha, and I'm from India. I am a PhD scholar in the Department of Design, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati, and this is located in the northeast of India. So this is a part of my PhD research, which basically focuses on creating digital crafts. I'm a textile designer by degree and profession, and I later started enjoying it a lot. And so the PhD is about digital crafts and creating a series of explorations based on that, and then evaluating it in a series of experiments with Indian users for nonverbal self-expression, which focuses on emotions and feelings, so nonverbal self-expression of emotions and feelings in their social space. So the textile industry in India is the second largest employment provider in the country after agriculture, and millions of people are involved in it. And the textile craft, which is a part of the handloom and handicraft sector, has a significant contribution in the gross domestic product of the country. So despite being thousands of years, ancient traditional practices, it's been in a gradual decline, especially in the last 2 decades. And this is particularly because of globalization and a lot of technological intervention. So although technology and globalization have had few positive impact, but largely it has suffered a major setback because of limited technological upgradation, low individual income. The processes are really laborious and time-taking, and a lot of skilled laborers have shifted to other occupations. So what we are trying to do is bridge the gap that has occurred between crafts, fashion, and technology in recent times. So there are very few designers in India who have actually worked upon the wearable technology or have even explored the traditional costumes or clothing or crafts with respect to the oncoming trends of wearables. And although there are huge ethnographic studies and a lot of subjective documentations, particularly because of the textile craft industry, every state, we have 28 states in India, and every state has more than 4 or 5 kinds of different types of weaving or embroidery or printing or painting or different kinds of skills to offer. So a lot of subjective studies have happened, but very less has happened in terms of merging it with the present, the contemporary trends of HCI or the other technological trends. So apart from this, there have been a lot of studies in terms of textiles and clothing and personality, preferences, emotions, and behavior, and a lot to do with textile trends and marketing. So what we are trying to do is bridge this gap, as we said, between crafts, fashion, technology. So this is where the state of the art is if we speak of the last 5 to 8 years, and a lot more of this was studied when we began with our PhD research. And although all of this is really brilliant, but when we speak of India, 1.2 billion people, they aren't really going to wear any of this or use any of this unless, although many of them know about these, many of them do not know about this, many of them like it, many of them dislike it, many of them can afford it, many of them cannot afford it, but most will not buy it unless you give them a good reason, along with affordability. So that is where our role as researchers comes into play, where we are able to convince people to be able to give them something so specific that they are able to utilize with seamlessness in their daily life when we give them something which is of this sort. And also, the silhouettes, the textures, the materials have to be what Indian textile traditions are about and not completely alien to what we have right here. For instance, if I tell you about the Levi's jacket, the commuter jacket, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. So what happens is this jacket, it costs 25,000 Indian rupees. And on an average, a typical Indian would not spend more than 1,000 rupees. So that's like 25 times more expensive than what Google is offering. So that's where Indians, 1.2 billion people will not really buy it. So the research intent is, as we said, that there's a gap that exists between craft, fashion technology, and scientific design research in India. So we have basically designed 2 handcrafted textile products. They are lookalikes. So it's a handmade jacket, which we'll show you in the upcoming few slides. And one of them has a very simple design because it's a part of a series of explorations. So this one's a very simple design. It has a simple LED strip attached to it, and it has a wireless remote control, and it changes 8 colors. And we refer to the 2 textiles. The first one without LEDs is called a static jacket, and the other one is called a dynamic jacket. And we have experimented this for nonverbal self-expression, the context that we've given, to 124 young college-going students. So we tell you why we've chosen this demography later. So the objectives there are two objectives, basically. It is to report a comparative experimentation between a static craft and a dynamic craft, which is the jackets. And there are two hypotheses that we'll be testing through this experiment. First is that the digital textiles, so digital craft, it enables users to express emotions significantly in their social space than the static textile. And the second one is that the textile craft, it enables the users to express their feelings significantly in their social space than the static textiles. And then in the end, we'll show you a few of our design explorations, which are in the form of a scarf. We will not show that in great detail, but nevertheless, you will get a picture of what we are trying to do when we say we are merging crafts and technology and making it seamless. So this is the demography. The study was conducted in a premier fashion institution of a country, which is also located in the northeast of India. It is around 150 kilometers from my institution. And the students are graduate and postgraduate students who are learning fashion design, accessory design, textile design, and design management. And 60% of them belong to semi-urban backgrounds, and 40% belong to an urban background. In these institutions of our country, the students of all over the country are selected through a national test, so which is where we get a cross-cultural representation. So there are at least 5 different people of every single state, so it gives us a kind of an overview when we take 150 students. And around 80% of them are more experimental about recent trends and new fashion products. The reason of choosing young college-going students is because of several reports that we have. Around 60 to 75% of India is less than 35 years of age, so which is why youth marketing is a very common term, which is used and utilized when we do a lot of user studies with these trendy products. So that is the reason. And the study was conducted in an open space, in a hall, where the participants were seated in a group of 15 to 20. There's a projector screen on which a small brief is presented to them, and there's a set of demonstration materials. There's an interaction area, and there is a brief, and then they're allowed to interact, and they have to mark their responses after that. So these are the matrices that the users have for rating. On the left side of the screen, you can see these are the 12 emotions that we have used, which they have to mark, corresponding to the static textile, and each of the 8 colors of the dynamic textile, and the 7 feelings. So I'll tell you how these emotions and feelings came, because this is a part of my PhD research. So we conducted a behavioral psychology study with the similar category, similar user group, way back in our institution, pertaining to textiles. So what we found is that both static and dynamic textiles, they are emotionally charged. So whatever you wear, it conveys a certain meaning because of the color, because of the texture, because of the motifs, etc. So, which is why we conducted an entire study on behavioral psychology, and we came out with this list of emotions and feelings, and which is why this is being taken for this particular experiment. So, as we said, there was a brief, and then there is a static jacket, and the dynamic jacket is demonstrated, and then the participants, they interact with it, they rate the emotions with respect to the 9 categories, and then there is a photo elicitation. A photo elicitation has taken place only because we want to make sure that the users are put in a context. So the context that we have given is that there is this model in figure 5, the right-hand side of the screen, bottom. There's a model. She's seated in a cafeteria. We'll see that in some other slides as well. So she's seated in a cafeteria, and she's sitting in a mixed group of known and unknown people, and she's not allowed to talk. So she's basically expressing herself with no expression on her face, a blank face, with a series of colors, and the users are supposed to mark the response with respect to the photo elicitation study in the matrices. And in the second half, they have to represent what they would want to represent through each of these colors. And this is the look of the static jacket, and it has a hand embroidery. This is not a typically over-embroidered product that we have in our textile crafts, but it's a contemporary version of a traditional jacket. This is called bandi in our own language. So this is worn by both men and women. And although it was a part of a very traditional attire a few years back, but these days this is a part of formal, informal, and casual wear, along with wedding and everything. So it's worn by men and women and children of all ages. So this is the plate that was used for the photo elicitation. She's seated in a cafeteria, and she's changing the response through the colors of a jacket. And yeah, so you understood the static jacket. This is the dynamic jacket used for the photo illustration. And the bottom right, you see a T-shirt. So this T-shirt, this was again for a certain comparison that we have done, is when we asked the users one more extra question where we told them, would you like to express yourselves in different, why we're using colors to express ourselves in these scenarios, not just this, but because we are like 1.2 billion people, and India is a very crowded place, be it a bus station, be it a metro, be it a cafeteria. There are too many people everywhere. So there is almost no sense of boundaries or comfort levels. People are always bumping into each other. So is there a way to subtly tell someone that I'm not comfortable, you could be here, or is it possible to say it verbally or to express it non-verbally? So that is the T-shirt that we use. So this is one of the latest T-shirts. It's called Signal by Broadcaster Wear. So whatever you type on your Android phone, it immediately reflects on your T-shirt. So we asked them whether would you like to represent yourselves non-verbally or verbally. So then we have their responses for that as well. So the findings of the study, the data was basically non-parametric in nature, and we used Friedman's ANOVA for the comparison of means, and which was significant. So we went for a post hoc analysis, and we found that the digital textiles, they enable users to significantly express emotions in the social space of users than the static textiles. And when you see the mean chart of the representations, the static jacket represents optimism, admirability, and interest, whereas the other eight colors, they represent an entire array of the other emotions. And similarly for the feelings, the response for feelings, for both photo illustration and for if the users, the way users would want to represent themselves. So although the response was not entirely positive, but it was towards positive, which leads to confirming our second hypothesis, where digital textiles are enabling users to express themselves in their social space. And the static jacket, it conveys the feelings of I'm relaxed, I'm in a good mood, and I'm thinking deeply, whereas the other 8 colors, they represent an entire range of other feelings as well. And in the bottom, you see the chart for preference for verbal or nonverbal expression. Verbal or nonverbal expression. So this had a mixed response where overall around 60% of them were really positive about using textiles as communicators in their social space to be able to nonverbally express themselves if at all required. This is a photograph of how the demonstration took place, and the participants interacted and later on marked their response. So in conclusion, this is an attempt to introduce Indian textiles to the trends of HCI and to introduce interactive textiles to the Indian population, and this could find interesting applications for smart living, assisted living, for health and education. And we need to have a larger sample group because India being a very widely populated country with a lot of cross-cultural barriers, we need to understand the Indian population better. These are some other examples that we have. So the first one is a very intricate embroidery, which is called Zardozi. And what we are trying to do is just draw design elements out of it and embed electronics in it and make them a very portable, rechargeable textiles. As of now, all our prototypes are not washable, and these are a series of scarves. The second one is a painted textiles with LEDs in it. And the third one is a sample that represents block prints of India, which is very common in the West. And what we have done is we've used thermochromic pigments. And on the application of heat, it appears and disappears. So we are trying to apply this for both clothing and interior and experiment it with a large user group. So thank you very much, everyone.